All right, let's dive in. Today, we're going to break down the logic behind a really deep concept in Christian eschatology, the Day of Atonement. We're going to see how this isn't just about the world ending, but about a very carefully planned process of cosmic justice and a cleansing of the entire universe. So let's start with this powerful question from the Apostle Paul, because it really frames our entire explainer today. According to the material we're looking at, the whole point of this cosmic drama is to give a final, undeniable answer to this challenge, to show exactly how death itself is completely and utterly defeated. So, how do you actually break death's power? Well, according to this view, it's all about a chain of logic, a kind of domino effect. And it all kicks off with one single foundational standard. Okay, so first up you have the law. The source we're looking at presents this as the ultimate objective standard for what's right. It's the measuring stick, it's what defines righteousness, and by doing that, it also defines what sin is. It basically sets the rules for the whole cosmic game. And because of that, sin, which is just breaking that law, is the very thing that gives death its power. It's the sting, you could say, that gives death a legal claim over creation. You see, without sin, death would have no teeth. It would be totally powerless. So here's the crucial takeaway. If someone, anyone, could live a life in perfect step with the law, a life completely without sin, then death would have absolutely no claim on them. If you can break the chain right at that link, the link of sin, you take away death's sting, and you conquer its power for good. And that brings us to the first, and maybe the most fundamental piece of evidence in this entire cosmic argument, the resurrection of Jesus. Now, this isn't just presented as a miracle, it's presented as a kind of legal precedent. The argument here is that since Jesus lived without sin, death just couldn't hold him. His resurrection becomes the ultimate proof of concept. It demonstrates to the entire universe for the very first time that the law isn't some impossible standard, and that a sinless life always leads to victory over death. But here's the thing. This first proof doesn't just kick off the end of the story. Nope. Instead, it starts a waiting period. You've got Jesus in heaven, waiting for a very specific condition to be met, and then you have all of creation on earth, waiting for something the Bible calls the revealing of the sons of God. So all this waiting, it's all leading up to one massive event, a moment known as the first resurrection. And this is the key that unlocks everything else that's about to happen. The book of Revelation paints this really dramatic picture. You see the souls of martyrs under a heavenly altar, and they're crying out for justice. But they're told to wait, just wait, until their numbers are full. A very specific, pre-planned group has to be assembled first. And that's the big question, right? Why this group? What's so special about these specific people that the final judgment of the entire universe has to wait for them? Well, the answer, according to this theological framework, is pretty incredible. It all comes down to collective proof. See, while Jesus was the first proof, this group of regular human beings proves to all of creation that obeying God's law is actually possible for humanity, even if it costs them their lives. And that act validates the law as a totally fair standard for everybody. And this is so important, because it's not just about winning an argument. It's about making sure that when God's final judgment finally does come, everyone, every angel, every being, understands that it's completely righteous and just, not the act of some cosmic tyrant. By proving the law is fair through human witnesses, it gets rid of any doubt and prevents another rebellion from ever happening again. Okay, so once that proof is on the table, once it's undeniable because of the martyr's resurrection, the final sequence can finally begin, the cosmic Day of Atonement. The way these events in Revelation unfold is kind of like a set of Russian nesting dolls. The opening of the seventh seal reveals the 7 trumpets, and then when that 7th and final trumpet sounds, it unleashes the 7 last plagues, which are also called the bowls of God's wrath. Now, it's easy to see all this as just punishment, right? But that's not the whole story. This framework presents it as a grand purification. The Day of Atonement is the process of scrubbing the universe clean of every single trace and effect of sin, which ultimately leads to the completion of free will itself. And here's where things get really fascinating. We're going to see how all these huge end-of-the-world events are actually reflections of an ancient ceremony from the book of Leviticus. It draws this direct line between a shadow and its ultimate reality. First up, the incense offering. Back in the old ritual, the high priest would burn incense to create a cloud, kind of veiling the overwhelming presence of God.
In Revelation, we see an angel offering up incense mixed with the prayers of the saints, preparing the heavenly throne room for what's coming next.
Then you have the cleansing of the sanctuary. The high priest used the blood of a sacrifice to purify the holy place. The ultimate reality of this, the text argues, is the 7 plagues being poured out to purify the entire creation, while the temple in heaven is filled with smoke and sealed off. Next in the sequence was the cleansing of the outer altar, the one out in the courtyard. This earthly part of the ritual has its parallel in the final judgment on all the corrupt political and religious systems of earth, which is symbolized by the destruction of the armies of the beast. And finally, the big one, the famous scapegoat. In the ritual, the high priest would symbolically place all the sins of the people onto the goat and then send it out into the wilderness, gone forever. Well, the ultimate fulfillment of that is when Satan, the original source of all sin, is bound and thrown into the abyss. So, after all of that, the proof, the judgment, the cleansing, what's the final result? What does a universe that has gone through this cosmic atonement actually look like? Let's just recap the whole journey here. First, the martyr's resurrection proves God's law is fair. Then, the Day of Atonement purges every effect of sin from existence. The source of temptation himself is locked away. And the final, amazing result is a universe where free will is perfected. Creation, having seen absolute proof of God's justice, can now freely choose to love and follow him, with no more doubt, no more suspicion. The chance of another rebellion is just gone. And that leaves us with this incredible idea to chew on. This whole cosmic structure we've walked through isn't built on raw power, but on the absolute necessity of proof. It suggests a form of justice so committed to fairness that it has to prove its own righteousness to the entire universe before it acts. It's a pretty fascinating concept to think about. Thanks for exploring it with us.